Did you ever wonder what happened if you didn't have natural gas? In TGI, we provide natural gas, the energy that moves the country. It drives production and productivity. In 2024, our purpose materialized in every one of our actions. We're sure that sustainability is key to fostering the future. That was our commitment in 2024. Our commitment with the planet. We optimize the use of natural resources and we contribute to the reduction of waste and the protection of the environment. Our commitment with the people. With energy, we transform the lives of 6,800 people through social projects. Our commitment with the economic performance and governance. In 2024, we seek to generate economic value for the organization and the stakeholders. Everything with a team of over 420 people who work with the commitment, convinced that natural gas is the energy of the present and future. A clear commitment is to expand our infrastructure to guarantee the supply of natural gas to every corner of the country. Scan our QR code or visit our website, tgi.com.co. Good morning, I'm Karen Guzman, the Director of Financing and Relation with the Investors of GEV. Welcome to our conference of results of TGI and Cálidda. The conversation will be done in translation into Spanish and it's being recorded. The results were issued yesterday and they are available for you to consult. Jorge Andres and I will lead the conversation, and Marico Ollero, the Director of Cálidda. Once the presentation of TGI is done, we will answer your question and we will move on with Cálidda's presentation. Include your questions in the calls chat, indicating your name and the organization you represent. Jorge, over to you. You will lead the result presentation. Good morning, Karen, and everyone else. Thank you for the introduction and for everyone to join this morning. In the first slide, what we see is the relevant key factors and the main facts and commercial performance and financial performance. On the first slide that we have, we show an image of all the presentations that we've had directly in the territory in our station of Ballena, Guajira, where we propose a solution for gas supply for the Colombian people. This solution allows for a short-term delivery that ensures with a sustainable vision, long-term vision, gas for our Colombians. We have attended several presentations in the area of Ballena with different key actors and authorities to complement and promote this project. This is a big part of what we want to propose in today's presentation. Here we show the relevant facts connected to finances. We have income in the third quarter of 2025 of around 1.5 trillion pesos minus the budget of 2025. In terms of EBITDA, we have a figure of results of 143 billion. This is 1.1 billion above the budget for 2025. We have to mention that after 3 years of an intense work and management, we managed to have the issuing of the resolution from the Energy Administration with the resolution of charges. As I will tell you in the next slides, it needed the issuance of a resource in order to get the figures that we are expecting. I will let you know about the impacts that this will have. In terms of operational income, we have more hired qualities and contracted versus budget, and this generates income of 35 million, and we have less income because of what we're waiting for the increase of chargers and billing. This was forecasted by the second quarter and the resources that we needed to propose. But the figures are very close, as we saw earlier. versus the budget that we had. In terms of OPEX, we have optimization of management expenses and consumption of combustible gas. Thanks to the hydraulic optimization of our transport system, we have 33.6 billion less in expenses, and these results allow us to be 11.5 below the budget for 2025 in terms of operational expenses. This is 46 billion pesos less. Next slide. This is where we are in terms of net profits. We are reaching an accumulated of 314 trillion pesos. This is minus 3.3% versus the budget for 2025, which means is that we are very close, even if we don't have the billing schedule with a very solid projection of closing according to what was forecasted for the closing of the year. In terms of net expenses, we have a minus 22.5%. This is minus 90 trillion pesos versus 2024, thanks to the renegotiation of the club deal negotiation. And this brings a lower amount of basic points. This brings around minus 22.3%, minus 37 trillion pesos. Here, we want to show what has happened with the resolution of charges that was issued by the CREG, the Commission for Energy, in August. We had a notification during this period, and then we understood that the Commission used a very high demand, high above the figures that we are transporting today in real terms. It's important to understand that the charges of transport as of this date that are obtained by a formula that can be generalized as follows: investment plus management expenses and maintenance divided by projected demand. Even though not all investment and administration, operation and maintenance expenses are recognized within this administration, the main impact is associated to the increase of the demand that were considered for every pipeline and for every gas pipeline. This means that by increasing the demand substantially, the charges of transport go down. When we see the graph, the bar graph on the right-hand side, what we see is that the current billing versus the charge resolution of CREG, this is not reasonable. And then we interpose a resource of reposition that enables us to use the real demand figures. And we have a displacement in the emission of this resolution of charges. Undoubtedly, several of the figures of 2023 and 2024 are closed figures, and the use of higher demand does not match reality compared with figures that are already closed. The reposition resource is completely solid, and it should be approved by the Commission, Energy Commission, in the coming months. This is shown in the next slide, and this shows what we are doing in order for that resource to be approved. This means that every one of the arguments should be validated by the technical commission of the technical team of the Energy Commission. And we consider that the arguments are solid enough in order for the billing schedule should be issued over the next coming months with a positive impact, as it is determined by the regulation and the formulation as well in terms of coverage. The error of remuneration as a function of debt in dollars denominated curves for the technical team of the CREG, there is a mismatch and calculation error. This means that we will accept our request for a correction, and the impact of an increase in the price billing with a regulation of stretches throughout the national territory. For these increases of billing, when we are brought into a regulation of stretches, or that they could be used thanks to this new approval of the resource that we intend to use. This is in terms of the charge for resolution. Since the last month to September, thanks to all the technical studies of TGI over the last months and even years, we propose a solution that will guarantee the supply of gas for Colombians. This is a solution that enables to use the national system of transport, which today belongs to TGI, directly, with also the use of new gas sources through Guajira and our station Ballena, the industrial complex of Ballena, which is the picture that we are using at the background in this slide. This is an industrial complex. The pipeline Ballenas Barranca has an ability of up to 260 million cubic feet. We are only using today a little over 20% of its capability, which means that we have full functional capability to bring in a new gas source. Thanks to this solution and the support of our board of directors, TGI can supply the gas that Colombians need as of January 27, 2027. We have deficit in terms of gas, and it's real. This is a solution that will enable us to transport and deliver the gas to the distributors that all Colombians need. This is a solution that includes an investment of $135 million, maximizing the ability of transport up to 300 cubic feet, and we will bring the gas to the inner part of the country, where we find the most evident deficit as of 2027. Additionally to this project, to the regasification process, we have prepared all projects that are included in the natural gas supply plan where TGI is incumbent. The projects in blue in this slide are the projects that we are presenting to be executed by TGI to update the transport infrastructure and to be prepared for this change of source and gas supply. Natural gas, as we have seen over the new year, of the last few years, the natural gas sources are going to be external, and they are going to come from the supply in ports. These projects, we are going to have the bidirectionality Vasconia Mariquita, La Belleza, 200 million cubic feet, and up to 120 million cubic, Centaurus Guanada by 1 million additional cubic feet, and Gualantay-Neiva 17 million additional cubic feet. These projects are all incumbent with 100% certainty. They need to be developed over the next few years with a total investment of 1.3 trillion pesos. We are making sure or securing the coming into Bogota is a project that allows to transport up to 200 million cubic feet, and it ensures the connection with Mariquita, Bogota, and the project that I just mentioned of the regasification in Guajira Ballena with a project of 400 trillion pesos. These are the projects that we are presenting for UDME for the approval of the natural gas supply plan, where we would have 198 kilometers of new gas pipelines We can increase with up to 200 million cubic feet, and by directionality, 441 cubic feet. Next slide. Here we have the projects, the recent projects in terms of expansion. These are IPAD regulated, concluded by last October, and the station, compression stations, Pradera and Benadillo in Mariquita, Gualanday, and Jamundil section. They are under operation, and they should be delivered with a few points of improvement in the checklist that we need to complete by the next coming days. But these stations today allow us to understand that TGI is capable of putting in place development projects and to continue with expansion and growth. And these spaces show that we are delivering projects. That's why those that are in the supply plan are doable and feasible, and we will complete them over the next few months. We need to mention that we continue in the path of efficiency. Thanks to the savings in combustible gas, we have reached the goal of efficiencies in terms of lower operational expenses. We're 109% for the goal for 2025, and in terms of improvements of construction and repairs, major repairs of gas pipelines, we are about 90% of compliance, which means that there is room for improvement for us to continue defining in an even better way our facilities and our gas transport processes. And we understand that they can be further optimized over the long term. Finally, in terms of sustainability, I am happy to announce that we increased in 11 points in the course standards from 70 to 83 points. We have the first point, and I am proud to thank all of the team and all our stakeholders that contribute permanently. We have signed 11 contracts with local suppliers, and we have the recognition of good practices of ODS in the category of human rights, and 85% in gender and diversity for 2025 in the mission in ranking park, and 100% of restructuring climate in terms of climate strategy, and 48% reduction of GHGs emissions. Thank you very much, and now I give the floor over to Beatriz, and she will share the financial information. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And now moving on to the behavior of the third quarter compared with the third quarter of 2024. The first thing is the reduction in firm contracted capacity. We have already mentioned this earlier. This year, we have the maturity of two remittance of the contracts with two remittance that represents a little more above 50% of our income and revenues. And what happened is that they readjusted what we call structural demand. This is to say, they were over contracted, and because of the maturity of contracts, they were adjusted, and that's what represents the fall that we see of firm contracted capacity of 660 million cubics. This is to say, this is a fall of 56 million cubic feet. This is 8.5%. However, in any case, the other important event that accounts for a fall in income is that the previous year, as we all know, we have the El Nino phenomenon, and that's why the transported volume went for 493 million to 448 cubic feet. However, we maintain a use of the contracts, which is very relevant. This is 74%. So, those effects that we see in the component, the operational or structural component of the market, they make up for a fall of income of 24 billion pesos. This is a fall of 4.6%, which is not, as just as Jorge mentioned, is not that serious of a fall, basically because what has been happening is that because of the change of sources that the gas comes from, besides having a higher contracted capability, we have also higher prices. So this is lower than what we initially had forecasted in the initial budget. And moving on, looking into the EBITDA, those 24 billion pesos worth of fall of our income, we need to consider the whole OPEX, which makes up for an increase of 24 billion pesos in that quarter, and they are explained that we have more salaries, a higher payroll because of maintenance that the company has put in place, all the maintenance. Additionally, we have lowered the use of fuel, combustible fuel, but we have also paid some debts, a few debts that we have with producers. We have used that capability, and that's why the reposition gas wasn't included in that increase of the 4 billion pesos, with which EBITDA goes down by 6.8% in the accumulated quarter, accumulated by of 2024. When we want to explain operational profitability, we need to add to the EBITDA's behavior those operational revenues where we have reduced a provision that we had with OBAs, which are the balances that we have with our remittance and producers, because we used gas, firm gas, to pay those balances. We have also, but this is also explained by 4 billion additional that we have in depreciation and amortization due to the investment programs where we have higher depreciation and amortization. Just as Jorge mentioned, when we move on from operational utility, what has happened in the net profits, we see a reduction of only 10 billion pesos compared to the previous year. Basically because in the non-operational component, everything that has to do with financial expenses, this means a reduction of around 9.4 billion pesos reduction because of a lower performance in terms of this profitability. We have had a positive impact in terms of taxes, and that causes us to have a fall of only 10 billion pesos in the net profit area. And also with financial indicators, we have actively developed a behavior of viability management, the general viability management, reducing our club deal, additionally with prepayments. We made a prepayment of 50 billion pesos that will added to the prepayment that we did in March for an accumulated of 100 billion pesos. And as we see it right there, right now, as of now, we have a debt of around 3 trillion pesos of a tax with 3.3%, but we have improved quite a lot the behavior because we have a leveraging, a quite small leveraging. On the left hand side, we see the gross debt, our EBITDA is only 1.9 times. This is to say we are far off the rating agencies' terms, and we have increased the coverage, which at one point when we implemented the change, the pesoification, the conversion to pesos, it went down. We were reaching the inferior limit of 3, but on the right side you can see that now coverage is 3.7 times. And with that, my presentation is done. Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions right here. Maybe Jorge, you can help us with the answers. Andres Emiliano from Balance. What opinions do you have the project of if or do project in Caveñas? What is the impact that that can have for TGI?
No sé si perdimos a Jorge.
Is Jorge with us? Okay. I'm going to ask the question again. Andres Emiglario from Balance. What is your opinion about FSRU project of Ecopetrol in Coveñas, and what is the impact of volumes for TGI? The project of importing gas through a facility that is included for uploading crude oil from the technical standpoint, it can be done, but there are important challenges. We're talking about changing a system, an oil gas pipeline of low pressure to a system of high pressure downloading. These tasks require engineering, but also an important time of execution. Therefore, beyond working on our project of regasification in Ballenas, these are projects where the country needs to work. A country such as Colombia can not only have one simple regasification facility, it should have several, not only one. These are projects that we need to put in place simultaneously. Regasification in Ballenas and any others are not individual. They should be done in tandem with others. But in the short term, in order to supply the deficit, the natural gas deficit that we have, the one that can do it is the Guajira, because it also uses an infrastructure that is already under operation. The Caveñas has larger deadlines. We expect to work together with Ecopetrol, but our priority should be in regasification Guajira. Juan Pablo Ramirez from Banco de Vivienda is asking, remuneration for regasification in La Guajira by TGI would be charged in the prices or price schedule. Basically, the price of gas is in the littoral, which is the cost of molecule plus regasification. However, we are also including the regasification process within the plan of natural gas regasification that we are presenting this week. And this means that when the Commission, the Energy Commission, after its approval, projects which take a few months could include it, thanks to the approval from UDME, will be remunerated. In the meantime, the first phase will include gasification of gas, and that will also include it in the Ballenas industrial complex. Thanks, Jorge. We have several questions from Andres Duarte from Corfi Colombiana. The price schedule for TGI, what is the change in the income? And are there volume capacities in both those? Is there a resource of reposition? What is the impact? Basically, when we get the price schedule with the charges from the Commission of Regulation and Gas, as we showed in the presentation, it has a negative impact versus the figures that we have today. That's why we have the resource. We continue using the same price schedule that we used in the previous period. There is no direct impact today because we are in a process of revalidation of that inquiry. We expect that one to be validated over the next few months and to, of course, get the charges that we have thanks to the maintenance operations that we have done over the last few years, and they are connected to a rational demand, or to what we have today. We are moving around 500 million cubic feet. One more question from Andrea, TGI. Can you help us? What is the impact of coverage? Is the cost of that sale going down? Effectively, yes. In the total cost, including the derivative, we have a reduction in the accumulated quarter of 37 billion pesos. This is to say 22.3%. That represents that decrease of 166,000 to 129,000 million pesos. That reduction in the cost of our dollar debt with coverage takes place because of the reduction that E-Green has presented. Thank you very much, Beatrix. Another question for Jorge from Andres Duarte. What is the remuneration of regasification? Do you have to include what is operated by silos, just as Ecopetrol mentioned that they only include normal gas? First of all, we need to understand that the Sirius project is a long-term project. Those of us who have done offshore projects before, just as the operator Petrobras and Ecopetrol expect to have the environmental and social permit, the execution period of this project is 6 years. The expectation of approval of this project is by 2026. This project would not be part of this before the year 2032. TGI will be completely prepared to transport gas by then, the gas that will come from the production of this project. Those 400 millions of cubic feet that are being proposed, and our gas pipeline, Barranca-Ballena, can transport the additional volume alongside with the regasification of Guajira that will help us as the anchor of reliability to secure the supply of gas that the Colombians need. In terms of regulation, Luis Alfredo Serrato from it will help us. Is it viable to include also a stamp so that the charge is not by a stretch, but by securing the molecule in transport? Hello. Doing that is completely viable. The resolution 175 from 2021 introduced the model of stretch aggregation in a single in a single charge for those. TGI, for example, proposed the addition of all its stretchers into one, from 21 all the way down to only one for the whole TGI system, regardless of where the gas is coming from and going to. There are proposals from other regional aggregations, national aggregations. That is in the hands right now of the regulator. This is a mechanism to mitigate impacts that can happen in terms of prices, and the regulator can do that. If the regulator wants to do that, also with the approval of the price schedule. Thank you. We have a question from Agustin Bonasera from Panguich. How are you going to replace the bond, the dollar bond? Should we think about only local debt? That is not going to include in the price schedule right now. Beatriz. To answer that question, we need to consider the liquidity of the local market, because we have a bond of around $550 million. Next year, we're going to start exploring alternatives that also include refinancing in the international market with a coverage, the corresponding coverage, and we will also consider that alternative because we don't believe we need to consider all possible local alternatives in order for there to be enough liquidity to refinance the bond of 2028 with the local market. In any case, we need to bear in mind all considerations of liquidity and financial costs, liquidity in the refinancing of the bond. And fundamentally, it's clear to us that the coverage was recognized for us in the negotiation, and it will be recognized also in terms of the price schedule. But regardless of that, we need to study whether the international market with the corresponding coverage will give us better refinancing options of this bond that besides the local market. But we need to study different alternatives for that refinancing. Thank you, Beatriz. Thank you very much. We don't have further questions for the TGI team. Thanks to the whole team. Now we will begin with Cálidda presentation. To me, it was a surprise because if I want a loan from Cálidda, and you can do it, and I asked them to have it in order for us to have the motorbike. I went there with my daughter, and it was relatively easy. My bills needed to be paid timely. They gave me 24 months to pay. It's not too long. Getting loans oftentimes is not that easy. There were plenty of motorbikes up there, and my son-in-law liked it. Whether it's going to be for my grandson or my son-in-law, they will use it for transport, to go to work, to study, and they are happy because they wanted to have one of those for a long time, but it was hard. Now, over to Mari Caballero, Finance Director for Cálidda. Good morning. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining for the revision of results of Cálidda, third quarter 2025. Before moving into the figures in detail, I would like to recap on the focused areas where the distributor is doing in the short term. Clearly, we need to continue increasing coverage, and this includes more kilometers and more connections. We will take a look at that. In the area of focus that we're working right now is developing the demand of the sector vehicle, especially heavy vehicles. There is a very important opportunity to increasing our participation in the market. We need to continue using that market. This quarter, we've had some activity in terms of debt refinancing. I'll get into that further ahead. Now talking about focus areas in the midterm, our project of expansion of the concession through an addendum. We want to make it a reality for access to the center and south areas of Peru. This project moves forward. Authorities have changed in Peru. We have had meetings with the leaders of the new ministries, and they ratify that this is an important project for the center and south areas of the country. There are no specific dates for that, but we can identify that the perception that the authorities today have in Peru, the new authorities, is extremely positive, and they want to continue working on this initiative. Now, reviewing the figures of the quarter demand, it's important to understand that there's a fall that is connected with demand uninterrupted of the generation sector. Hydrology this year has been in good levels. We've had plenty of rain, and if you compare that with last year, the same area, hydrology rain is connected with thermal electrical plants that are only activated in certain periods would not participate. Especially the Santa Rosa plant has had a very limited participation. It only operates with interruptible demand. That's why we have this fall. If you exclude that component, the demand, excluding generation, thermal, it has growth of 6% over this quarter. 9 months total demand increases in 1.1%, even including the lower demand of interruptible. That hasn't changed. In terms of connections and networks, we continue increasing our coverage by having more kilometers and connections. Clearly, this is a trend that we will continue seeing. The distributor today has reached 2.1 million connections. This is a coverage of around 8 million Peruvians in Lima and Callao. The potential is reaching the limit. We would have 2.4 million connections. We will continue growing. We'll continue developing the coverage of further networks. Marginally, this growth will ever be lower. In terms of EBITDA, we see a 2% decrease, and this is connected to the monetization of the impact of this lower interruptible generation demand. If you take EBITDA, in 9 months, it's growing 3%, and there's our expectation that by this year, EBITDA will grow about 3% the whole year. In terms of rating agencies, we have several revisions. As a whole, whether it is locally or internationally, the very good investment rate for Cálidda. Refinancing activities, we are closing a very important transaction with CAF by $5 million. This transaction basically seeks to refinance debt with maturity in 2026. 2026 is an electoral year. The board of directors decided to bring forward the exercise of refinancing of this debt. 406 billion millions are destined to refinancing two times of loans and 90 to new capex. An important relevant point connected to this exercise and this transaction is that last year Moody's, for our international rating, which is BA2, they gave us a negative outlook, understanding that we haven't given clear signals of how we were going to refinance the debt with maturity for $406 million. With actions that we have done through this loan from CAF and the repayment $306 million that was already done in September this year, Moody's reconsidered their outlook and they have taken to stable. In the vehicle segment, this is one of our focus areas. We are working hard on implementing penetration and everything that has to do with heavy vehicle transport. And this year, we are adding 6,000 vehicles and we are reaching maybe 9.5 thousand vehicles, heavy vehicles, already connected or operating with gas, natural gas. It's our goal to reach 20 to 25,000 vehicles. It's important to understand that these vehicles consume between 5 to 6 times what the regular vehicles consume. We need to create more offer also. We have connected a new station, the Autogas up north, which will support around 750 vehicles daily. Now, moving into results, operational and financial results. As I said, the demand experiences a fall compared to last year, strictly connected with uninterruptible demand because of conditions of better hydrology compared to last year. If you leave that outside, you see a trend, a positive growth trend, residential and commercial areas, and the penetration of the vehicles. That is important because in terms of the prices, competitiveness, and monetize in terms of consumption, residential or household and generation vehicle, they tend to have in terms of prices of around 8 to 5 times higher. Monetization wise, it is an important impact, positive impact. Competitivity remains high, 60 to 70% more advantageous than the substitutes, and the volume compared to the previous quarter. There are two effects: stationality in Peru, in the coast of Lima more specifically. The fishing activity is very high in the second and third quarters. There is also a prohibition. All the plants that process, they do not have any of that. We have a fall of 6 million cubic feet per day, and a very important industrial client that we have, the cement producing plant, is the most relevant industrial client that we have. They had to stop one of the air ovens connected to repairs and maintenance activities, so their production went down. This should not happen in the next quarter. It was just in terms of more penetration of networks and kilometers, we have added 127 additional kilometers. As you see on the map, the area of gray is what is pending networks. but the potential that we have is ever lower. What is relevant to mention here is that when you study the percentage of participation of the A and B, those are the higher or higher income areas of society. Today they are around 30%. This is positive. If the consumers from higher levels, they tend to have consumptions that are double from those that are the more vulnerable areas of society. The competitivity of the prices increases. Financially, EBITDA experienced a decrease compared to the same quarter of last year because of what we mentioned. This is a lower demand of interruptible from thermal plants and the effect of fishing and the stop of UNACEN, the cement producing industrial client. Today it's in 63.3, and it is our goal to continue growing that margin and to take it in the midterm to levels of 65%. Net income wise, our results are above compared to the previous quarter or the same quarter last year. This is a result of the transaction, the refinancing transaction. During the third quarter, we repaid $350 million corresponding to a syndicate that we got in 2021. It has maturity date January 2026. With that transaction, there is a derivative that needed to be broken. It gave us a positive effect of $3 million of net profits, which has enabled us to offset the impact of the lower uninterruptible demand. In terms of debt, the main issue here is the reprofiling of maturity, and if you see the same picture compared to last year, debt, we have $650 million with the refinancing activity that we did in the third quarter. We have kicked that debt to over 3 years. Also, the leveraging ratios and coverage remain in levels relatively stable in leveraging, multiples of 6 in terms of coverage. Next. And in terms of perspective, we expect to finish with 750 kilometers of networks, worth of networks this year, 110,000 to 115,000 EBITDA that should grow between 3 to 4% by the closing of this year, and leveraging under 4%. And with this, I'm happy to answer your question. Thank you, Mario. We have a couple of questions from Andres Duarte, Corfi Colombiana. How to explain the lower volume of the generated numbers in Peru? Are you generating hydraulic? Yes, what I mentioned earlier, what you see today in the specific quarter was a higher participation of hydraulic generation, and the rain levels have been quite positive, and no central participation was needed, or they do not tend to participate in thermal generation, more specifically the central of Santa Rosa, which is the one that appears at the end of the whole scale up of thermal. They tend to appear only when there is an important drop in the hydro sector. Other than that, all the contracts of hydro pays stay there. We do not have any signals that there should be a 3-quarter contract. In future maturity, the renovations that may happen shouldn't be long term but rather shorter terms, shorter. But we do not see that firm capacity will drop.
Listo, María
And
muchas
those are
gracias.
the
Y
main.
tenemos
Thank you,
otra
Maru.
también.
We have another question from
Si
Andres.
no concesión en Perú, se alcanzó algún
If you
acuerdo
without new concessions in Peru, were the income EBITDA levels increased? If there is no concession, the economic road of Cálidda is going to be all the way up to 2033. There is still potential. There is still coverage to be executed in certain areas. They are ever further away, but there is an opportunity to develop the volume of heavy vehicle transport. The enriching should be of 26 to 33 to levels of 1%. The EBITDA would probably grow at that pace. The most important variable is the net profit. That's where we see KER, which would be around 5%. Because what's going to happen with Cálidda, we have debt of $1 billion. When you stop running investments because there was no potential for that, where you're going to share out of the free bucks to repay the debt. So that's where there is an important drop over time in the interest charge. When we think about the mid and long term, looking to 2033 with Cálidda, it's important to look into net profits. I think we have a last question from Andres. Have you had problems of environmental licensing or previous consultations? Well, what do you think? Why do you think that this is less serious in Peru than in Colombia? We, in fact, haven't had wherever greater issues, but there is a lot of red tape to do when we are going to enter a new area. We've been studying, for example, what we call the smaller north. This is an area that is relatively important over the last few years because there is a port, the port of Shanghai, that is developing infrastructure, and we had to study the environment, to study the potential of the area. It took a long time, between 1 and 1.5 years, but there are alternative instruments that can be used, and we are studying them in terms of what could be a potential coming into the central and south areas of Peru if it is signed, the extension of the concession. Those alternative instruments are denominated DIA, so there are declarations of environmental impact, and they reduce the execution of the process itself. And today we do not have any relevant restrictions, unlike maybe TGI or other organizations. We are not centered in areas where there are communities. Therefore, the previous consultation is not something that we have to deal with on an everyday basis, but that is basically, we have instruments that give us flexibility. The higher complexity is in terms of timings. Last question. The dollar, the functional currency of Cálidda is dollars, always dollars. So we don't have any other questions. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for your questions. TGI and Cálidda. Thank you very much. Good day to all of you. We are energy movement 129 years after that. We are a force that drives Colombia, Peru, and Guatemala. 5 years ago, we traced a new road that we drew in our corporate strategy, looking into 2030. The results speak by themselves today by meeting our superior goal, which is to improve lives with sustainable energy and competitive. The organization we've released over 965 billion pesos. We created Enel Colombia with additional equity of 5.5 trillion pesos in assets, and we draw the future with 1.8 million megabytes of additional potential. We have electric and gas transport. Through Enlace in Colombia, we are driving a milestone for energy transition. Colectora, the great road that will connect the winds of the Guajira with the heart of the country, moving forward to integrate over 1,000 megawatts of clean energy to the national energy grid. Its construction advances to transform the energy network by 2026. We have one of the most important processes of social dialogue of this sector, 236 consultations with indigenous and Afro cultures based on respect and agreement. By TGI, we operate the main system of gas transport in Colombia, a network of 1,003 kilometers and integrating production centers with consumption centers. Driving the development of the larger cities, we are driving the rules of the game of tomorrow with the plan of gas supply in the country. Also the identification and the regasification process with Guajira. We also include the Ballena with projects of priority infrastructure for Colombia. In Peru, Cálidda brings natural gas to 2 million households, and it will continue bringing homes to 7 additional regions with the expansion of its concession through an investment of above $500, with benefits of around 150,000 households and creating 9,000 direct and indirect jobs. The group Tunas is getting stronger, and it strengthens the distribution of electrical energy, implementing clean energy and energy storage with batteries, and guaranteeing the gas supply and energy supply of the South with solid progress and high reduction of the expenses. They improved their liquidity. We are creating a company that's key for the south of the country and their industries, and that today connects over 105,000 homes in the region of Ica. In Brazil, in alliance with Spain, we acquired 50% of Argo Energia. We included also the projects Real Matres and Quantum, including also 2.37 thousand kilometers in networks. We are the 5th investor in Brazil, consolidating its position in Brazil and reaffirming its commitment with the distribution of energy regionally. In Guatemala, Conecta consolidated its position as a key operator of the national system of transmission, reporting advance in the expansion plan of PET transmission of above 95% and executing works at the substation Modesto Mountains and Guante Oeste. They are increasingly making a contribution to the energy coverage of the country with tangible progress in the energy security and the efficiency of the interconnected national system. We liberated the first bonus of Colombia by $500 million in the international market. We are leaders in sustainability, first in gas and 5th in energy, according to the Dow Jones Index. We created the Center of Corporate Synergies. And in 2025, the Group of Energy of Bogota consolidated its positioning as a key organization for corporate transparency. Digitalization in the group became our part now, or our DNA, by totalizing in 2025 over 1,000 collaborators trained in innovation, digital transformation. We consolidated the innovation platform with over 600 connected startups, and we strengthened our presence in the most relevant innovation rankings, and we generated benefits of $97 million with a positive impact to over 9,600 people with communities with projects of social innovation. Today we have managed to increase the price of our stock by 2.6 times, and it reflects the trust of the market in the strategies of the group and the solidity in its business model. Our dividends have also increased sustainably. strengthening investment for Bogota and reaffirming our commitment with the creation of economic and social value. No, a project like this is not built on sand, it is built on unwavering trust. Trust is the most valuable asset that we have. We have included the Pact of Transparency, a code of honor that guides every one of our decisions and secures that every one of our achievements is sustained of the most important principles and pillars, ethicals and trust. The energy that we transport doesn't only light and connect homes, it fosters progress, it transforms realities and creates well being for the communities. We are more than just a company, we are a living commitment with a story that is built with trust and shared purpose. In the Energy Group of Bogota, we believe that as a group, together, we will continue meeting our promise and the purpose of improving lives with sustainable and competitive energy.
No, claro que al comienzo, es que al comienzo que uno, al comienzo siempre es, pero bueno.